Northville Roadrunners Technical Seminar. The science behind running. Breaking down the key principles of training so you can become a better runner. Your lactate threshold occurs when you run above a certain speed and lactate starts to accumulate. It restricts the speed at which you can race. If you want to race faster over distances greater than 10k, you need to improve your lactate threshold. The most effective way to do this is to do regular runs at your lactate threshold pace. Blood lactate is a byproduct of aerobic energy production, and blood lactate occurs all the time, even when you are sitting down or asleep. As you start to run, the rate at which you produce lactate increases, but up to a certain point your body removes or reuses this lactate and everything is okay. As you run faster, more and more lactate gets produced and your body becomes overwhelmed and it cannot remove the lactate or reuse it, so the concentration starts to rise rapidly. This is your lactate threshold. The excess lactate gets turned into lactic acid, which brings around drops in your blood pH, i.e. your blood becomes acidic, and this starts to shut down certain processes within the body, so your body literally cannot continue to perform at this level. You have no choice but which to slow down. The velocity at which this occurs is your lactate threshold pace, and this is an important piece of information. Just like VO2 max, the most accurate way of obtaining your lactate threshold pace is to visit a lab and be tested. They take small amounts of blood and test it with a machine, and when they see lactate dramatically increase, this is the point of your lactate threshold, and they can tell you what pace and heart rate that corresponds to. Your lactate threshold occurs when you race between 10-mile and half-marathon distances. If you have recently raced a 10-mile or a half marathon, you know your lactate threshold pace. Once you've got this lactate threshold pace, it's easy then to do training to bring around improvements to your lactate threshold. And the most successful way is to do a sustained run of up to 6 miles at your lactate threshold pace. Another option is to do lactate threshold intervals, such as 6 by 1 mile or 3 by 2 miles, and you would take maybe a 2-minute interval recovery between. These are still very useful, but not as successful as a sustained run. What you have to be careful of not doing if you do lactate threshold intervals is running faster than your lactate threshold pace. It's very easy to start running at your VO2 max pace. And if you do that, what you will do is you'll actually increase your VO2 max and not your lactate threshold. And as we know, a high VO2 max is very important, but if you're training to improve lactate threshold, improvements to your VO2 max is not the time to do it. So you have to be very controlled, very disciplined, and use your paces correctly. The biggest adaptations that occur to your lactate threshold actually occur on a cellular level. Things like your mitochondria, which are very, very important in removing and reusing lactate, become more dense within the muscles. Another adaptation which occurs is you actually learn to use a higher percentage of your VO2 max at your lactate threshold. So you're using more of your aerobic capacity, and as such you're running faster. We also become more tolerant for short-term drops in blood pH, so our bodies get used to a lower pH for a short period of time, so that delays the point at which we have to slow down.